Welcome back to Behaviorally Speaking, Leadership for Changemakers, the podcast where we explore how lived experiences, personal and professional, shape behavior, how behavior shapes leadership, and how behavior science can transform people and systems through compassion. I'm your host, Dr. Bubb, and each conversation centers humanity, equity, and the belief that leadership is a set of actions, not a title. This episode is brought to you by Esther C ABA Services, where we help individuals and systems lead with behavior science, human-centered growth, and integrity. To us, leadership isn't about titles. It's about actions, values, and the choices we make within the systems we navigate every day. Today's conversation centers on how experience becomes influence and how each of us can create meaningful, sustainable change. Today I'm joined by Miss Lois Bubb, my oldest sister and a beloved veteran and recently retired educator whose 40-plus years of service in the classroom have shaped generations. She shares her journey from a child inspired by her mother's teaching, family, and community, to a young woman trusted with leadership before she even knew she was ready, to a seasoned teacher who shaped generations of learners in Grenada through compassion, consistency, and high expectations, to Dean of Discipline rooted in integrity, empathy, and service. Ms. Bubb offers powerful lessons about purposeful leadership and human behavior, and her journey reminds us that classrooms are leadership laboratories. We'll talk about how early experiences shaped her calling, how behavior science naturally flowed through her teaching, how compassion guided even the hardest disciplinary moments, and the cultural wisdom she carried into every classroom she touched. Our goal today is to elevate practice, strengthen capacity, and create meaningful, sustainable change together. Let's dive in. So, Sister Lois, thank you so much for joining today's conversation. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling very good. A little bit excited about this process that I'm about to engage in. And to be honest with you, very pleased that I'm being interviewed by my youngest sibling.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure.
Wonderful. I love to hear it.
Never expected I'll be in that position, right? But here I am.
Imagine that. Such is life. Yes,
just imagine that. At 60, I'm being interviewed by my youngest sibling.
Yes, exactly. Who would have thought?
I must say that's an honor and a privilege.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so excited to hear it. And, my goal today is really to honor your story as an educator, right? And then helping listeners translate all of the lessons, from your conversation with me today into behaviors and skills that they can use tomorrow. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great. That really sounds great. And that has always been my aim throughout my my course of teaching years, trying to help to develop the skills and so on of the new teachers as they come in.
Right.
To the system, even with the students and the parents, that has always been my goal. So if this is another medium to help me achieve that, I'm very happy for that.
Wonderful. I love to hear it. All right. Well, let's dive in then. So let's, talk a little bit about your roots and your calling into teaching. Can you tell our listeners where your story of teaching began?
Well, to be really honest with you, my story of teaching began at a very, very young age. While in school, because my mom was a teacher, and so from that very tender age, I always wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
And that always stayed with me, even while I was in secondary school. I continued to engage in activities that would help me with that, especially when teachers were absent. My principal, I guess, realized that I had certain skills that she think could help me in the classroom, and she would always use me to fill in for teachers when they were not there. So from that very tender age, I I always aspired to be a teacher. And so that's what I think have me in the teaching profession now.
Wonderful. I love to hear that. So just from your experiences, from people recognizing your skills, your talents, your abilities, but from you observing your mother, right? Our mother as a teacher, are all reasons that led you to teaching. So teaching is one thing, right? But recognizing it as a leadership opportunity is something else. So at a young, tender age, you recognize like, this is something I want to do. I want to be a teacher. I want to educate others. But when would you say you realize that you could, as a teacher, be a leader that could help shape the lives of others?
I would say that really started when in my very first years of teaching.
Okay.
You notice that sometimes you have difficult situations or challenges that you need to deal with on a daily basis. Right. And I realized based on the steps I took and I didn't really have training. Normally when you just start teaching in Grenada, you don't train first. Right. You go into the classroom first, and then in my years, but it's different now, but in my years, after 2 years of temporary teaching, then you go into college to be trained as a teacher. Right. So basically what I did was what I learned from my teachers in school, which unfortunately, when I thought I was doing a good job, when I went to college, I realized a lot of the things that I was doing was not the best. And so I had to change a lot of the strategies I was using. But I must say, my very first year in teaching is what kind of inspired me to continue teaching, because I remember I was going to resign. I was very frustrated, very, very frustrated. Okay. And I was going to send in my resignation letter, and there's this student that came up to me. I just happened to stay back in the school. I don't know why. I was just sitting there pondering and planning on, how I'm going to resign. And this student came back. He was a very, very slow student, almost the slowest in my class. Very rarely would he speak, very, very quiet. But I always used to try my best to help him, whatever way I can help him and encourage him. And he came back with this plaque, which I have up to this day, after all these years. A plaque, he came and he told me, Miss, I brought this for you. And when I opened it, it was a plaque with roses, and it said, I love you. Even people, when they see, thinking it's some man who gave it to me, no, it was my student. And I decided I'm not going to destroy it or get rid of it, because that is what changed my mind about sending my resignation and had me in teaching for all these years. So yes, it's been a challenge, but I think these are the beginning steps that helped me to stay in teaching and be the teacher who I was. And will continue to be, even if it's in another vein at this point.
Right. I strongly believe so. That was a remarkable story. And it makes me think of, the classroom, right? In my years now, obviously I didn't think of it that way growing up in Grenada, but the classroom was like a leadership lab, right? So I remember being in the lab at convents, in Joseph's Convent, Grenville, like studying chemistry with Miss Mark and biology with Miss Francis, right? And I wasn't specifically thinking of leadership in those moments, but looking back and reflecting, I can definitely see how those experiences with Miss Mark and Miss Francis really helped shape me into the leader I am today. So,
yes.
Right? What are
it was kind of a similar for me in convent, because being in the classroom and being able, because as a student, you have to be teaching students.
Yes.
And being able to command authority, and I guess based on how I carried myself, I was able to get them to, respond to me and listen and be cooperative and so on. And I think that's one of the things too that helped to influence my principal, because I didn't apply for teaching.
Right.
My former principal at secondary school is one who threw me into teaching. There was a school, the school where I started teaching, that school had just started, and they were looking for teachers. Yeah. And my principal, without me knowing, recommended me highly as a teacher. I wasn't planning to start teaching the same time. And that's how I got into teaching, actually. My former principal, she's the one who recommended me highly, based on what she noticed happening with me in convents. You realize I had the potential and great skills that can be used in the classroom. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So it was a similar situation for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. It's kind of like a teacher or well-lit classroom or a well-lit environment. It's sort of like a microcosm of society, right? So we normalize moving into different positions, like trying new things that we would never have thought about if someone else didn't share that information with us or help us see it, right?
Yes, please.
Wonderful. So you were born in St. Vincent, right? You spent most of your teaching life in Grenada. Is there any part of that journey that sort of helped shape your sense of purposeful teaching? So not just teaching, but teaching purposefully, where, students actually learn and they make progress and they move forward?
Well, to be honest with you, I cannot say being born in St. Vincent really impacted my teaching career, because I came down here at I was just about 8 years old. So I can't remember much of my school days. I know I had enjoyable school days, but it's kind of vague. It had nothing to do with my teaching career. I can't really relate St. Vincent to my teaching career. I more link my experience and my journey here in Grenada with my years in teaching, because most of my experiences were done in Grenada. So the journey from St. Vincent wasn't really impactful on my teaching career.
Okay. So then, based on your experiences in Grenada, what values did you say you subscribe to that you learned just from your experiences growing up in Grenada, the way you were raised, and then what leadership principles really anchored you during tough years, right? Because at one point you said you were going to resign. So what is it that really anchored you? And then you shared the story of the student. But were there other values that you hold on to, other principles that help anchor you during those tough times?
Well, a lot of the values that I hold there and I still stick to, most of it is attributed, one, to my upbringing. We grew up, as you know, in very strict homes. And also, thankfully, the schools I went to were high on discipline and so. So one of the main values that I have used to carry me through my career is integrity. Staying true to my word and modeling honesty for my students. That's a big deal. Also resilience. I had a lot of setbacks, policy changes, having to deal with very difficult classes at sometimes, or even personal challenges. So being resilient, empathy, understanding the struggles of students and colleagues, and meeting them with compassion, being curious, because I try my best to always be a lifelong learner. In the simplest of situations, you learn things that help you. Even my students, I learn things from them, and that also helped me. Service, I saw teaching as a calling, always saw teaching as a calling. I believe I was called to this job, and so that's why even though I had many challenges, I always stick to my job because I felt that was my calling, and I always felt that I needed to stay and stick it out and find a way to overcome the challenges. Because for me, teaching is like a call to serve others, not just a job. And so those are some of the principles that help me to succeed. Being consistent.
Being consistent, right? Those were all good. And I can tell you, for all of these conversations I've been having so far for this podcast, right? I'm finding that there are themes echoing regardless of who I speak to. So things like you mentioned resilience. That's been a common theme across the conversations I've had so far. Compassion. I had a conversation yesterday and that was like the overwhelming theme, right? Continuous learning, right? That too, service. You mentioned you also learn from your students. So bi-directional learning, is the theme that I'm finding, right? And then purpose and consistency. Those are big ones too. So I wonder if those are common just across professionals or educators, or people who are in helping professions, like ourselves. And another one that always came up was servant leadership. And you just mentioned that. You mentioned a calling to serve. So I'm definitely seeing some similarities. So considering all of that, Lois, and considering like my main professional practice is in behavior, but not also education, special education, right? How did you shape in your classroom, in your students, right, behaviors that supported and promoted a positive classroom culture during your 40 plus years of teaching?
Well, it was a challenge, but basically, for me, modeling respect, treating my students with dignity, set the tone for how they need to treat each other. That was one main thing, modeling respect. I established clear expectations from day one. When I meet my students, that's the first thing I did. Establish clear expectations, and I was consistent in doing that. So it wasn't like, I used to tell my students, it's not like a Monday thing, and maybe Tuesday, Wednesday, something else, and then Thursday, Friday, I go back to what I said Monday. No. Right. My children know that every day, whatever expectations I have of them remains the same. So I established clear expectations. I made sure that I was consistent in my rules and my routines so that I can build trust and reduce anxiety. So the children knew what to expect from Miss Bubb. And you're wondering, well, if I could get away with this today and maybe tomorrow I could try a thing, They knew that I was consistent. I also love to celebrate small wins. Once my children were successful, no matter how small the success was, I will try my best to celebrate that, both with the child and also with the students and their parents. I also link with home. The home impact is also really, 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 really a big deal. And that's one of the things that has helped me to be very successful as a teacher, linking with my parents. I also love to listen to my students. There are times sometimes I will go in a class to teach, and then that day I might decide I'm not teaching today. Let me just talk with my students. Let me hear from them how they're feeling, if I'm doing well, if I'm not doing well, positive, negatives, and we kind of come up with ways as to how to make things better for both sides. And also a major thing is promoting inclusivity. I try to let all my students feel valued, and so there are some teachers, because you have what some people consider the quote-unquote bright student in the class, you always link with those, and those who you feel are insignificant, you don't bother with them. It was not me. I would always ensure that everybody felt included, everybody felt valued, and we all work together to ensure that we all succeed, even though some might be at the top. Another thing I never did was call my children dunce. That was a total no-no for me. That word is not part of my vocabulary up to this day. Even teachers are to have them apologize to students if they call them dunce, because I don't believe any child is dunce. There are some who are slow and there are some who are much faster, but we all have our abilities, we all have our strengths, we all have our weaknesses. So I don't ever use that word. So these are some of the ways over the past 40 years that have helped me to shape positive behavior in the classroom.
Wonderful. I love to hear it. And out of everything you said, there are a lot of behavior analytic concepts that you talked about, regardless of whether you use behavior analytic terms or not. But modeling is a common one, right? That we're demonstrating what they should do. And then another one is behavioral congruence, where it's an alignment between our values and our actions. So what we say matches what we do, right?
Exactly. Leading by example.
Leading by example, yes. You talked about celebrating small wins. So that's the concept of positive reinforcement, right? So, and then you talked about being consistent, right? So if this applies on Monday, it applies on Wednesday. And that's so critical because when that's not the case, the opposite is what we call intermittent reinforcement. So when something is reinforced sometimes and not at others, right, then it creates a situation where you're more likely to see those behaviors you do not want to see because it's not consistent, right? Today you say, okay, and tomorrow you say, no, it's not okay, right? So that was really good. But I feel like the biggest takeaway from everything you said is that I heard you say, without saying it, everyone has potential, right? We all have different abilities. We might respond differently. We might learn at different, rates, but we all can learn, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. How did you help students? So I know you taught mathematics, among other subjects, but I know, a lot of math. And for a lot of students, math, is a subject we know could be difficult for some, right? So how did you help your students engage, right? And overcome any fear they may have had of challenging subjects?
Well, to be honest with you, I enjoy teaching mathematics.
Okay.
But every class I get, every single year, when I ask the students, my very first session, when I ask the students, how many of you love maths? Very few hands went up.
Right.
And you could see some were a bit hesitant to put up their hand and say no. But mostly students will say, no, I don't love maths. And they might give you different reasons why they don't love it.
Right.
And I am always excited when I see that. Because I know that is an objective for me, and I will tell them that.
Right.
I say my objective is that by the ending of the first term, that's what I will always tell them. Maths should be one of your favorite subjects. That is my aim. My objective is to get you to love maths.
Yeah.
And most of the times, I accomplish that within the first term. Until I remember there was a teacher in English who was teaching English, told me she gave the students this challenge to write a paragraph about their favorite subject. And she was shocked that most of the students wrote, I myself was surprised.
Yeah.
Most of the students wrote math, and she came to me and she said, what are you doing with these students? That all of them are writing that they love math so much. Yeah. And I told her, this is how I engage with the children, So one of the things I did to encourage my students, embrace their mistakes. Because none of us is perfect, and I always told them, even me, their teacher, I'm not perfect. I would make mistakes. We are human. So embrace the mistakes, but ensure that from these mistakes, you learn so that you don't keep repeating those mistakes. So I let them know that making errors is a normal thing. And I still make errors, and I would have to correct. Breaking their problems into smaller steps. So you don't just tackle the problem head on. You break it down into smaller steps, and you tackle it bit by bit. Practice persistence, always practicing, especially with maths. You have to keep repeating the steps over and over so that it becomes cemented in your brain. Verbalizing your thinking. Sometimes when you're talking through the problem, it helps you to come up with ideas as to how to solve the problem. And also seeking help. If you need help, you can ask a student who's maybe a little bit better than you in the class, or even me, come to me. Let me know, okay, we're having a problem here, and I will surely try my best to find ways and means to help you to understand. So, also celebrating success rather than speed. So it's not necessarily who finishes first, is on top.
Yeah.
Being able to finish and finish correctly, or even though you might not finish, get the final answer correct, but there are certain steps correct. That's something to celebrate. And so these are some of the things I use, the steps I use to help children to master. And these are the same, when you do check on it, these are the same steps you need when you have to figure out problems in real life.
Yes.
Being consistent, tackling things head on. You have a problem, you have to sit down and think, what should I do first? What should I do next? And so on. And the stick-to-itiveness is what helps us to overcome challenges and fear. Yes.
Yeah. I love that. So stick-to-itiveness, right? That's a good one. But also, as I'm saying with the theme, so my conversation I had yesterday, we talked about the perseverance of my guest, but it's the same as stick-to-itiveness, right?
Yes,
You also talked about like setting a goal and making everyone aware of the goal. So now we're working towards a shared goal, right? We have a shared vision, a shared purpose, right? Embracing mistakes, Lois, has been a common theme too, in my conversations, but just also something I promote. Even I have the same conversations with Michaela, like, making a mistake is okay, but for me, and I say the same, right? It's okay. I say the same to my staff. Okay, you made a mistake, great, but walk away with at least one lesson is always what I say.
Yes.
And then how do you learn from it? How do you move forward? Now, obviously, we know to continue making the same mistakes and expecting a different results, we often tend to define that as insanity. But the point is, you're learning from it and you're making change and you're adopting and you're bouncing back and you're moving forward, right? And then you also mentioned breaking it down into smaller steps. So in behavior analysis, we refer to that as like a task analysis. Like, let's write all the steps. So Lois, things that's simple to us as making a sandwich. Like, sometimes we have to break down each minute step, right? Each discrete step. So the child can complete the task, right? You talked about repetition, right? Something we talk about a lot. And then seeking help. I always promote like seeking help from colleagues, from peers, as you mentioned, right? So they can ask their friends, their classmates, peer mediation. But all of those are really, really good examples of how we can support students to help them learn. But I feel from everything you said, Lois, I think any of this you've done, it's because of your compassionate approach to teaching and education. So in your past role as Dean of Discipline, how did you balance discipline with compassion?
Balancing discipline with compassion, I think maybe that's one of the most delicate responsibilities in my role as a Dean of Discipline. Because holding students accountable, but still not losing sight of their humanity is critical. So some of the things I tried to do was to be fair, be firm, but try my best to be fair. So I encourage students to accept consequences more. This would have encouraged students to accept consequences more readily when they believe the process is fair or just. Respectful communication. So sometimes I could be really angry, sometimes based on the situation. There are times sometimes maybe I'm too angry, I will kind of hold back. Now, initially when I started teaching, you would lash out. So that was my experience in school. But then I realized, no, that's not working. And so sometimes I prefer to hold off until I'm a bit calmer. And then make sure that my tone and my language remain calm and dignified when I speak to students, based on the issue that may have arisen. I also try my best to be consistent. But although I try my best to be consistent based on the situation and the student I'm dealing with, because there are individual circumstances that you need to consider. So I try to apply evenly, but still try my best to be, make sure I be flexible. Try my best to be flexible. And then I also use a restorative mindset. So focus on repairing harm and relationships rather than simply punishing. Sometimes, a lot of times, we just think about punishing, beating. When I grew up, it was beat for everything, or you lash out and so on. But I prefer using restoration, discussing with the child how they could have done better. Let them come up with ways and means of how they could deal with the situation in future, so that what transpired would be avoided in the future. So restorative circles is one practical approach that help to bring the affected parties together, talk through, and you come up with solutions. Reflective assignments, asking students to write about what happened and how they'll improve. Positive reinforcement, recognizing improvements in their behavior to motivate them and continue. Also, I sometimes link with the parents. A lot of the times I link with the parents based on what I notice happening, and then get the parents also to reinforce them. If I realize the child has made some improvements, I call the parents, let them know so that they could celebrate with them at home. And these are some of the approaches I use to help me maintain a balance between discipline and compassion.
These were really all good. I heard you say accountable humanity, firm fairness, right? It made me think of, then you talked also about respectful communication, right? Consistency, but being flexible considering the individual student, the circumstances, right? So those contextual variables, what's going on in this particular situation, right? Or what else is happening? You talked about restorative practices and restorative circles. That's, a practice we use here a lot. And then you also talked about family engagement, but it made me think of two things in everything you said. Rita Pearson is, a big name in education here. But she always talked about relationships before rigor, right? Relationships before rigor. And then it also made me think of Maslow before Bloom, meaning basic human needs must be met before higher, level learning can occur.
So exactly.
Right? Yeah, and I think
sometimes the situation, the child might be hungry, or they might have been a situation at home between mommy, daddy. Sometimes when you inquire, you realize that's the reason why the child was acting out as they did, and so that's why sometimes it's good to have a conversation with the children to kind of determine what's going on, and determine what steps you take to help with the situation. So a lot of times it had to do with the home, and that is why over my years, and I keep telling teachers, teachers keep asking me, why is it I have very few behavioral problems in my class? And so it's because of what I've established over the years, especially a link with parents. That's one of the first thing I use. Every year when I get a new set of students, the first thing I want is the numbers for their parents. And I link with the parents, let them know the teacher, your child's teacher, and establish a rapport with them, because it really does help. Yeah. It really, really does help.
Yeah. Yeah. Parent engagement is huge. It's like you can't overemphasize that. Like they need to be, they need to be involved, right? That's a really, really big part, because the student is with the family and with the home more hours than they are with us, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And you want what you're trying to do in school to be reinforced at home. Because if you have to keep doing the same thing over and over every day, like they go home, what you're trying to instill in them in school is rubbed off, erased, it doesn't help. It makes your task so much harder in school. So when you have your parents in sync with you, it helps to make the work a whole lot easier.
Yeah. And then we see them as partners, right? Because you said from day one you want their numbers.
They are major partners. Yes, they are.
Yeah. That's really good. Those are really all good, takeaway lessons for anyone listening. So thank you for sharing. I guess one of the things I would love to know is there a particular student behavior moment or any moment, right, in your career that made you really proud, that you would always remember?
Well, I think I may have
shared it already.
I think I may have said that one. That child who was, when I thought what I did with him was kind of insignificant because I was in the old years. The child who gave me that clap, I can tell you, there's a story I always tell, because I think that is one of the things that really, and it made me realize that when you think that you're not really doing much, how you're impacting the child is a whole lot different, and you appreciate it for sometimes what you think is small and insignificant. I must say that part in my teaching career has stood out for me, because I always quote that story. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a great one. I don't think anything else can beat that, right?
There are many instances, to be honest with you, but that one always is number one for me.
Number one. Wonderful.
It's always number one for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sis, let's talk about Grenada a bit. As Grenadians, we have strong identities. We're really proud, right? A big, strong community, and we have several rituals and traditions, within our communities, within the island as a whole, but then which then make their ways into the schools and the communities, right? And we then can think of them as learning ecosystems. So are there any ones in particular that you said contribute to the way we approach education in Grenada, or the way that students approach learning, or the way that families, approach being engaged in their students' learning?
Well, I guess one thing that pops out at me is Independence Day celebrations. Because that's around the corner, and know when independence is around, you hear a lot of national songs. You have cultural performances. They organize parades with the students. Everybody dress up in the national colors. And the assemblies are geared towards that, being patriotic, civic responsibility and duties. So you help children to develop a sense of pride and patriotism in their country. I think that is one thing that goes out into the community, because you see, it happens not only in schools, but the adults themselves. Everybody from school days up to now, you are an adult, you're working and whatnot, you still see people putting on their national colors. Everybody's talking about Grenada and the 473 and whatever. I think that's a ritual that has made society also fully impacted. Another thing is school sports. That's this term. These things are popular, because these are the things that we really engage in this term. You have sports. So this is the sports season. So you have the parents and the community coming out and supporting the students. The students are glad to showcase their abilities on the tracks, to show their strengths and their vigor. These are the two that mostly pop out at me. Even when we have fairs, we have school fairs and so on. That also is linked to the community, because the community comes in and supports and encourages. So the bonds between the school and the society is strengthened. So these are some of the areas I see activities in school also helping to develop traditions between the children and the culture of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same. Those are what comes to mind, like, immediately. Independence sports and those fairs, right? So, it's like those rituals create belonging, right? We want children to come to school and feel like they belong, right? They walk into the classroom, they feel like they belong, right? They're part of the whole, right? And then, to me, in my opinion, Lois, I feel like it builds some level of psychological safety, right? We're here together.
Yes, exactly.
This is our culture. This is part of our norms. We can all celebrate it. And I think it reinforces, something we really push here, culturally responsive teaching, right? Recognizing the cultures and the backgrounds and histories of those that we're teaching, so that we're including and embedding them, right? Into all of
you're building community trust also.
Exactly. Yes. And then really another avenue, in my opinion, to build those parent relationships that you talked about earlier, right?
Exactly. So we realize that the schools now are central pillars of our society.
Yes, absolutely. And because people are so, involved and engaged and excited about independence, for example, if you weren't able to reach a parent before, not that you wouldn't have, like, that would be a good opportunity, right? Because
exactly. Because even when you have the parades and so on the street, the parents come out and walk along and support and cheer on, and it's a real community thing. So everybody is involved. And a lot of sometimes you don't get to see parents on other circumstances, but for these kind of situations, you have the parents there and involved.
And it becomes creative and competitive, right? So we're building that camaraderie, right?
Exactly.
In a healthy way. I love it.
Yes.
So you mentor new teachers, in your experience as a teacher. What skills and behaviors do you look for? Would you say people should look for in an emerging leader?
Strong communication skills. Being clear, being empathetic when dealing with students and your colleagues and even parents. Expertise in delivering the subject matter. Usually when young teachers come in, sometimes it's a challenge, but you look for the growth. So you see them move from point 1 to point 2, and that's one of the things I look for I look at in young teachers. Their problem solving ability, how they're able to tackle challenges and come up with solutions. Organizational skills, how they're able to organize themselves, manage their time, manage resources. Sometimes they are limited, but how they are able to deal with the little that they have and make it work. And also the responsibilities that they may have, how they're able to manage those effectively. And also just those, but looking forward to growing, vision for how they are planning for the future. How are they seeing beyond the classroom, and what steps they're going to take to ensure that they continue to develop and move ahead in their delivery of their subject matter to their students. So these are some of the things I look for, being able to manage, and so on.
Yeah.
Also modeling professionalism.
Okay.
So being consistent in being punctual. You can't be telling a child they need to be punctual and you are not. So consistency in punctuality, consistency in being prepared, consistency in being well behaved conduct. Because as teachers, a lot of times we feel we are the teacher and we can do what we want, but our children are observing us. And a lot of times they're not even aware of that until sometimes, the children speak out.
Yes.
How a lot of times they're also under a lot of pressure. How are they being able to stay calm and focus during those difficult situations? And then their willingness to collaborate, because to be a successful teacher, you have to be willing to collaborate with your colleagues, and their willingness to do that, and to share ideas and so on across the staff. These are some of the behaviors I look at, and they are indicators of a good teacher or emerging teacher.
Yeah.
Strong teacher.
Yeah, I love all of those. And, I can hear the themes that you mentioned now, like, being repeated, as we talk, right? Which is a good thing. And all of these were all, to me, really golden nuggets you just shared. Again, you talked again about the behavioral congruence, like making sure we're leading by example, like what we say is what we do. You mentioned a growth mindset. So I had a conversation, one of my podcast sessions with Dr. Jim Connell, right? He's an associate professor at Drexel University. But we talked about that in a conversation, a growth mindset. But he said, two of the questions he said he would ask his staff and his students is, where are you trying to go? And how can I help you get there? And that to me is the same as you talking about a growth mindset, right, Lois?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. That you see, when you have a goal, when you know where you want to go, if you don't know where you want to go, then any road will get you there. But when you really know where you want to go, and you set the goal, you set the steps as to how you're going to get through getting there, then that's a better approach than just come to school and you just go through the routine. And a lot of times these teachers are not the ones who are successful. And so these are the things that has helped me. Competence help, linking your competence with your character and so on. All these things help to build you and to help you.
And I love that you mentioned competence. So one of the big things we talk about in behavior analysis, there's scope of practice, right? And scope of competence. So the scope of practice for me as a behavior analyst is all of the components of applied behavior analysis. But my scope of competence is just those areas that I'm competent in. So recognizing that, and if I'm given an assignment or a client comes to me and I'm not competent in that area, saying so, right? So same thing for teachers, Lois. Wouldn't you say, like, for example, if you come across a particular situation and you're not sure what to do, instead of faking it, like, be honest about it and seek support, right?
Exactly. And that's the same kind of behavior you want to model for your children. So if you know you're having a challenge, and that's one of the things I always say. If I realize I can't do something, I ain't pretending. Because you end up making yourself look foolish, So I always make sure I say, watch now, this is a bit of a challenge to me. Or I might go and do some research. These days with a computer, you go and do some research and so on and see how you could tackle it. Or I link with one of my colleagues who I think might be able to help me. And we collaborate and, and that's the same thing you want to help your children to engage in, because you have to let them know that not everything you can do. Some things will be a challenge. And when you're having a challenge, you should feel free to speak up and say, I am having a challenge here. Can I get some help, or can you advise me? These are things that really help you, not just as a student, but in life.
And being honest too. So that's when I started teaching at colleges and universities. This was in 2013. One of the questions, so there was a behavior analyst. This was before, I really got as much as I am into behavior analysis as I am today. And I said to her, well, what if the students ask a question and I don't know the answer? And her response was simple. She was like, well, just say you don't know and tell them you'll get back to them, right?
Exactly. That's what I do. I had that same challenge initially, because I was always scared they would say, well, miss, don't know the answer to that question. And then you let them know, look, I don't know. And we don't know everything. but you sometimes refer them to somebody who might be able to help them better, or because it might be a subject area that you're not skilled in, or you find ways and means of thing. And so the children realize, well, Miss really doesn't know everything, and she's not as scared to say that, and so it's okay for me too, just the same. If I don't know something, it's okay for me. I feel happy and confident to tell Miss, look, I'm having an issue here, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you build a trust in the relationship, right?
Exactly. You
also mentioned like being able to stay calm and stay focused, and that's a big one, right? And you even talked earlier in the conversation about what I would call is like taking a pause, like taking a deep breath, like, you know, just making sure you're calm and you're not upset, you know, before you then follow up. And that's something I believe is so important. I mean, especially since after COVID, Lois, and we've seen an increase in challenging behaviors or students who need social emotional support, and that's not going anywhere. And, you know, we're also seeing it more in parents as well. So us being able to manage our own emotions, right? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I agree with you on that. Being able to manage your emotions could be a challenge, especially, well, for me, during COVID, that was a major challenge for me.
Yeah.
And you need to help protect your own well-being and take care of yourself while serving students, you know.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've learned over years, now before, what I used to do is come home with the stresses of teaching. Whatever I go through in the day, I bring that home. And so it's like you don't get a break, and I realized emotionally that was really draining.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for me at first, but I started when I crossed the gate in the evening. I left. I try my best to leave all negatives and so from the day there, and then focus on home and being able to deal with what I have to deal with home. So that was one of the things I did. I set boundaries. I knew when to step back, leave schoolwork at school, as I said, when possible, so I could protect my family and my personal time.
Right.
Sometimes reflecting, quiet reflections to process your emotions and reset, especially after a very challenging day. Celebrating small victories. Sometimes the victories are not much in a day, but whatever small victories I was able to accomplish during the day, I celebrate that. Right. So I try to focus more on positive than just on the negatives, which could really weigh you down. Engage in activities. Well, I'm not so much of a outgoing person. I'm more of a home mom, as you would say. But I try my gardening. I do a lot of gardening. Engage in those things. I used to do a lot of reading. I don't have much time for reading these days, unfortunately. But I used to do a lot of reading when I was much younger. Art, drawing was another way that I release stress and so on. Yes, so these are some of the things I did to help to calm me, keep me focused, and keep me in the know. And help me to get out of the rut. And this is one of the advice I've been giving young teachers when they keep coming to you and how stressed they are and how burdened they are. And I told them, I said, these are some of the things you have to engage in to help to get yourself back into what you really should be and not stay in that negative mode all the time, because it could really weigh you down. It could really be very stressful.
Yeah. Wonderful. So to close us out, Lois, what are 3 leadership takeaways? It might be points you already shared that you wanted to reiterate. It might be something new you want to bring into the conversation. But what are 3 leadership takeaways you want teachers and leaders of today to walk away with from this conversation?
Well, foremost for me, you need to learn to lead with integrity and consistency. That has been my mantra.
Okay.
Students, colleagues, and your community, they will thrive when they know that they can trust your word and your actions.
Yeah.
And integrity means that you are fair and you're honest in your communication. So those things help to, I think, as a leader, these are one of the main mantras.
Okay.
Empower, for me, the second one would be empowering others rather than controlling them.
Okay.
In my younger years as a teacher, that was one of the things I realized with a lot of our school principals. They more try to control teachers than empower teachers.
Okay.
I like to give teachers opportunities to showcase themselves. Sometimes you might have a thought in your mind or a way of doing things, but sometimes individuals come up with really unique and successful ways of handling the same thing. And so I love that even in the classroom as a teacher. I love that when I see my students. So empowering others rather than controlling them. That's one of the things the second thing I would say. And the third one, I see leadership in education not about titles. It's about service to your students, their families, and our society as a whole.
Yeah.
So keeping your vision anchored in service, leading is not just about titles. Some people, they work for a title. That has never ever been my goal. I do what I do to the best of my ability, and because I believe that I am there to serve. And so whatever way I see I can be of service to ensure that every decision contributes to shaping responsible, compassionate individuals, that's what my focus has been. And that's what I would encourage anyone who wants to get into teaching. These are the three things I think that will help them to build good, strong character as a teacher.
Wonderful. I love to hear it. So you said lead with integrity and consistency.
So you build your character.
Right. Empower others rather than controlling.
And service.
Right. And then leadership is about service to students, families, and societies, not about a title.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. I love it. And that's the whole premise that I've been preaching, daily, but through this podcast. So I really love those 3 takeaways you have for our listeners. I believe it'll be very helpful to them. Well, sis, thank you so much for joining the conversation. I appreciate your time. I'll have to think of a book to get your way so you can read in addition to gardening. I have to add that to my list. And then I'm going to have a conversation with you to tell me the main takeaways from the book, right? Yes.
So what you doing? You sending me back to school?
I am sending you back to school.
I plan that this year I need to really take a break for myself. So that's one of the things I plan, for this year. Is me. It's all about me because I have not been focusing much on me. And so I decided at least for the first year, let me really truly take a break because I know if I go anywhere close to the school or anything like that, I'll just get right back into it. I'll no longer be retired. So I think I'll at least retire for 1 year and focus on me,
Yes. I love to hear it.
Yeah. And I'm actually engaged in what I really do love. Gardening and flowers and so on. These are the things I really do love, and so that's what I'm really engaged in.
I love to hear it. And congrats again on your retirement after 40 plus years of teaching. That's quite.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, when I just started teaching, I didn't realize I would have spent 40 years, but look at that, 40 years has come.
Yes, exactly. And came and gone. Yes. So thanks again and have a lovely day.
Thank you so much for having me engaged in this. I think that is one of my very first experiences in being engaged in a podcast. And so I was a little bit anxious at first, but I realized now it was just a conversation. It was just a conversation.
And you can check that off your list, right?
Yes, I can. I really can. Thank you so much.
You did it. Yes.
Yes, I did it.
Awesome. All right. Have a great
thank
day.
you so much, my dear, and have a blessed day as well.
All right.
And thank you for the opportunity. Bye-bye.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, my dear. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Behaviorally Speaking, Leadership for Changemakers. And Lois, Sister Dearest, thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your 40 plus years of lived leadership in today's episode. As we close, I want to leave you with this reflection. Leadership lives in our daily behavior, in how we listen, how we respond, and how we create space for others to grow. In this conversation, we heard powerful reminders that integrity and consistency build trust, that empowerment, not control, is what grows strong teachers and strong students, and that service is the heartbeat of leadership, especially in education. Lois reminded us that mistakes are essential for learning, that compassion belongs even in discipline, and that every child, no matter their pace, has potential waiting to be nurtured. One powerful takeaway from today's conversation is this: when you think what you're doing is small, it may be life-changing to someone else. At Esther C. Bubb ABA Services, we believe in humanity first, leadership at every level, and becoming better every single time. Every voice deserves to be seen, heard, and supported. If you have a story about leadership and behavior from your community, share it with us. Your lived experience matters here. We aim for accessible, culturally responsive conversations. If we missed the mark, tell us. Continuous learning is our practice. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone building better systems. For training, coaching, and behavior-based leadership support, visit EstherCBubbABAServices.com. Until next time, lead with humanity and purpose, practice with compassion and intention, and create meaningful, lasting change. This is Dr. Bubb. Thank you for listening.